Hi, welcome to lecture 5, and we're going to be focusing on the effects of failure to form attachment, which is known as privation, and effects of institutional care. So our two key studies there are Hodges and Tizard and Rutter et al. So first of all, we need to know key definitions. So we know deprivation from our last lecture, which is when you actually have formed an attachment and then it's been lost for a short period of time. Privation refers to where attachment has never been formed at all. So this is, for example, if I don't know, um, a child loses their parents very, very young in childbirth or something like that. So they've never actually had an opportunity to form any type of attachments with anybody. And then you need to know institutional care is just places, it's just institutions, just buildings that are developed for a specific purpose. So, for example, hospitals is an institution because it's developed to look after ill patients, just like um, children's homes, for example, are developed to look after children who may be awaiting adoption. Yes, so we have different types of institutions there, and institutions are you stay there for a period of time. So it's like a residential thing, you have to stay there. So our first key study, which you'll need to learn, is by Hodges and Tizard, and they're the ones that they were looking at 65 British children. It was a longitudinal study, so a study that was done over a long period of time. And they found that these children had been placed in these kind of institutions before the age of 4 months. So it could be for it could be for any reasons, basically. Their parents could have died. Um, there could have been issues in terms of drugs or alcohol issues in the house. And what they found is that in the institutions that they were placed in, there was a policy or a rule that staff were not allowed to form any types of attachments with the children. Obviously, this is in the 1980s, so they really wasn't sure about the effects of this, but that was the law then as it was there. And what they found over the years is that these children, especially the ones who were um, restored. So restored basically means that some children were taken back to their original families. It could have been that their parents were okay in their drugs and alcohol dealing, so everything was okay. So they found that those restored children, they were less likely to have formed attachments to their mothers. Whereas those children, those 65 British children who were adopted, they were just as close to their parents as normal children, yeah, in a normal family. And but the biggest finding was that all the children, most of them had issues with their peers and they were quite quarrelsome as well. And these kids were most likely to be bullied. And they also craved more attention from adults. Okay, so this study actually shows that um, privation can have its negative effects, especially in terms of your peer relationships and how you relate to other people. Remember, in this institution, some people actually stayed in the institution because people actually they didn't get adopted or they weren't restored back to their family. So we can see that there is negative effects of never being able to form an attachment. And the reason why this is a privation study is simply because you can't really form an attachment before the age of 4 months. You're like fresh in the world. You're just newly born. When we're looking at evaluating this particular study, again, I like to have my three main evaluation points. There's loads of ways you can evaluate it, but generally, to cut down on the amount of stuff I have to remember, you look at the most obvious. Obviously, they're British children, yeah. So what happened to my other types of children from different parts of the world? What happened to my children from Asia? What happened to my children from Africa? Would they have issues dealing with pairs, or is it just a British thing? So we can say it does lack some kind of population validity. Again, longitudinal studies, if you don't know what attrition is that when you do a study over a long period of time, so they looked at them from like before age 4 months to like 16 years old, what happens? You're going to find people who kind of like go AWOL. They go off the radar. We can't find them anymore. So attrition means probably the loss of participants. And we don't know actually what happened to those participants. It could be those participants um, are living perfectly happy, normal lives who actually do relate to their peers okay, but we never know. So again, that is a main problem with longitudinal studies. But we can say as a strength that it does support Bowlby's theory that, you do need to form an attachment within the sensitive or critical period within the first 2 years of life. Otherwise, it's game over for them. And this is basically what this study found, that because they didn't form that primary attachment within the first 2 years of life, they had issues, and specifically issues with dealing with other people and being bullies. Our next key study, Rutter, again, he's, well, him and others, they looked at Romanian orphans in Romania. So at that time, they had a lot of orphans simply because of the war that was going on. And again, there's another longitudinal study because they assessed them at ages 4, 6, and 11. And they found that these orphans that were adopted before 6 months, they were fine. So they had normal emotional development. But those orphans that adopted after 6 months, again, they had issues with peers and they were real attention seekers. So what can we say about this study? It says that privation may not be so good for children, but if if we catch it early, so for example, if children are adopted much earlier, we can counteract the effects. So in terms of a real world application here, we need to, and it's changed. So in terms of policies, we like getting children adopted as soon as possible. So if a parent has decided that they don't want to keep the child that they have, you'll find people at the hospital waiting to get the baby and lining up people for adoption, because we know that earlier these children have to form attachments, the better it will be for them. So that is a nice real world application we can use. However, again, the most obvious I'm using, Romanian children. What happened to my British children? Okay, what happened to my children from America, Asia, Africa? We don't know if it would have done exactly the same kind of process. We don't know if privation would have affected them the same way. So we can say it's lacking some type of population validity. And again, problems with longitudinal studies, attrition. We don't know all those people that have that we've lost somewhere along the line. So they could have had perfectly normal lives, but we actually don't know about it. So that is the end of lecture 5. Make sure you learn those 2 key studies. You can use the studies for privation if it asks you for privation, institutionalization, because they're more or less both the same thing.